Let's talk about TRON Ares. TRON Ares is the latest film in a long history of TRON films and other media. This one stars Greta Lee, Jared Leto, as well as Jeff Bridges. I'm not the biggest fan of the previous TRON movies. I remember watching TRON Legacy when I was much younger, and I did enjoy it, but at the time I wasn't super critical of movies. This latest entry was actually a pretty fun popcorn movie. I'm realizing more and more as time goes on that sometimes it's totally fine to just go and watch a movie for fun. Not everything that I watch needs to be a 10 out of 10 on different review platforms. And this movie was exactly that. It didn't have the greatest story or acting or concept, but it was just fun. Greta Lee in this movie was amazing, as she was in movies like Past Lives. Jared Leto, who we all know has a long history in film, was also pretty good in this movie. The visuals in this one were fantastic and really striking, but for sure the highlight of this movie was the soundtrack. This is a soundtrack that I think a lot of people are going to listen to well after this film is out of theaters. It reminded me a lot of Legacy, where I loved that soundtrack because it was made by Daft Punk. Now, I'm going to be moving on to some spoilers here, so if you haven't seen the film yet, make sure you skip to my final thoughts at the end of this video. So the story on this one was decent, not necessarily good, but it was there and it did its job. I think that the writing overall was okay, and besides the occasional cringy line here and there, I really didn't find any huge issues with it. I think that this was one of those movies that really wanted to put the visuals and action at the forefront. Now, that being said, the performances here were actually pretty good. Greta Lee's amazing. I love her in everything that she's in, and she definitely put her all into this one. I was surprised to see her kind of be an action star, but she totally fit the bill. Jared Leto, as always, did not phone it in. He is an absolute tryhard in a lot of these roles. He also looked really good in this movie. I liked the way his character was designed, and you know him, he's an expert in grooming. I do also want to really quickly shout out Evan Peters. He has had an interesting filmography, but playing the villain in this one, I think that he did a really good job. Besides the decent to okay story and the performances from the leads here, I think that another positive of this movie was absolutely the visuals. Some of the sequences in the grid were so good and so detailed. There was even points where I noticed that the water droplets on the camera lens were square pixels instead of circular droplets that we're used to seeing. Now, I do think that they went a little overboard in some areas. There was something going on with Gillian Anderson's eyes at one point where they looked totally CG. It reminded me of that scene in one of the Blade movies where Wesley Snipes didn't want to open his eyes. But for the most part, the movie looked fantastic. The red lights and lasers that they were using looked so good on a theater screen, and I definitely think that most people are going to enjoy that. But as I said before, the number one standout part of this movie was the soundtrack. The Nine Inch Nails did an amazing job, and we have yet another TRON movie with an absolute banger of a soundtrack. They did a really good job of matching these music pieces to each scene, and especially when it came to being in the grid, the music was just driving the entire movie forward. This is a soundtrack that I've already been listening to. It's going to be something that I listen to while I pretend to work out, and I'm definitely going to listen to it while I'm trying to ignore my coworkers. I did really appreciate the callbacks to the previous movies, especially the original TRON from the 80s. There was a really nice sequence here where they dove into the grid from the 80s, and the visuals were so cute, and I totally loved what they tried doing there. Jeff Bridges is so funny because he kind of just plays himself in this one. Now, I never saw the original TRON from the 80s, but I can imagine that his character was slightly different than what we saw in this one. But I didn't really care for them trying to shoehorn his story into this movie that much. Again, I didn't go to this movie to see some kind of drama or an extension of the original movies. I just wanted to go to the movie theater, grab my snackies, and enjoy something without thinking too hard. So to recap, I think that this movie was a really fun time in the theater. Again, you've got a story that's kind of there. It's good. There's nothing really to complain about. The performances from the actors were pretty good. The movie was absolutely gorgeous, and the soundtrack was worth the ticket price alone. And I'm totally okay with them making more Tron movies if it means we get banger soundtracks with each entry. I gave this one a 3.5 on Letterboxd. For diehard Tron fans, I definitely want to know what you think about this one. Again, I'd never really watched the one from the 80s. I did watch Tron Legacy a long time ago. I didn't watch this one to kind of get a continuation of those previous stories. I feel like this one is more standalone than anything else. So I would like to hear from you guys how they compare to some of those other movies. Did it do a good job of paying homage to the original? What do you think could have been improved with the story? As always, I appreciate those of you that have watched to the end of this video, and make sure that you argue with me in the comments.